Well, a blessed good morning and welcome to the middle of the week and our devotions for today, Wednesday, in the seventh week of Easter. We continue to journey through this time as we continue our focus on our theme to be in the world but not of the world. As we go through this theme this week, I invite you to really take some time to reflect on what it means for you, especially. Where do you find yourself being challenged by this statement? Where are you, in a sense, sort of being submerged in the world and being of the world? Where are you denying your unique self and your own purpose for being in the world? Where are you selling out, as it were, in order to be able to keep pace with others, to keep pace and to be able to belong? We always like to fit in so much, and oftentimes we do so at our own peril, to our own detriment. So, what about you? Where are you? Where do you find yourself losing yourself? Just a few thoughts as we prepare for our time of meditation this morning. Coming into our inner space, our inner world, just releasing the focus on the outside for a few moments. Allowing ourselves to really reconnect with that greater part of ourselves, that part of ourselves that in so many ways at times becomes lost, and we're not even aware that it has become lost. So we want to be able to spend these moments observing ourselves, being that witness, seeing what makes us think, what makes us react. So we take our attention to our breath. When we're focusing on the breath, it is virtually impossible to focus on any of our mind games. When you focus on that breath, we come back to our original selves. We feel that vastness, that openness, that spaciousness. And we remember the innocence. Remember the uniqueness. Remember that sense of being a part of something greater. So breathe in, releasing our thoughts, letting them float past without running after them. Knowing that I am not my thoughts. My thoughts do not rule me. So important for us to make that distinction. To allow ourselves to be objective and to see that they are my thoughts and there's me, and they're not the same. So from that place of quiet, a place of inner silence, you now listen to scripture. When Jesus came to the other side, to the region of the Gadarenes, two men possessed by demons came out of the tombs and met him. They were so fierce that no one could pass that way. Suddenly they shouted, "What have you to do with us, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now a large herd of swine was feeding at some distance from them. The demons begged Jesus, "If you cast us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." So they came out and entered the swine. And suddenly the whole herd stampeded down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the water. The swineherds ran off, and going into the town, they told the whole story about what had happened to the men possessed by demons. Then the whole town came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. As we continue this theme, reflecting on this idea of being in the world but not of the world, it is something that we need to just spend some quality time with. Because that sense of being of the world is a very tricky notion. It's tricky because, in a sense, it is all that we know. And so the idea of being in the world and not of the world, in a very real sense, requires us to retract, to withdraw ourselves from that which we have considered the norm. What is the norm is not necessarily what is for us. But we oftentimes try our best to fit in. But when we fit in many ways we are of little use to anyone because we are not ourselves. And we just become part of the greater challenge. When you look at this additional story this morning of Jesus and the two men who were possessed, the story tells us that nobody was able to pass that way. No ordinary person. No person that had bought into the whole idea that these men were so terrible. No one that accepted them for what they appeared to be and would rather be petrified of them than to withdraw their focus from what they perceived. From the time Jesus approaches them, they perceive that Jesus was different. They saw that he was not like everyone else. And that therefore, as someone of God, the men knew that Jesus had authority, had power. And so rather than perhaps doing what they would normally do, which would be to scare those persons who came near, instead we can almost hear the fear that seemed to have mounted up in them. This is important because this is yet another example of what it means when we walk in our own shoes. When we really do the work of discerning who we are in this world. When we are not simply following the crowd. When we recognize ourselves as individuals sent by God. Even our ability to say of ourselves that we are sons and daughters of God. And this is not a statement because, in a sense, we are created by God. But this speaks of being of the nature of the divine. When we're able to be doing the work that causes us to really come up higher and perceive ourselves from a higher place. The two men, possessed by lower energies, recognized the higher energy in their space. And they knew they had no answer for it. They could only submit. In times in our world, in times where we find ourselves confronted by things that we don't understand, sometimes things occur to us that seem really strange. Oftentimes our immediate response is to go into a place of fear. And when we go into a place of fear, In a sense, we lower ourselves and we become like that which we are fearful of. But if we would practice coming up higher, when things present themselves to us, and recognize that we are not in that place of fear, then we have greater authority. The disciples were constantly amazed at how Jesus had authority over unclean spirits, the wind and the waves. Jesus seemed to have some tremendous authority. And if we think, perchance, that was just Jesus, again, remember Jesus' words, "You will do greater things." It is within our DNA to be as Jesus is. But we do not get there simply because. We get there through a coming to an awareness of our true selves and our full potential. We can be in the world and not of the world. But we must choose. We must choose. When things happen around us, we must choose. Will we behave and respond like everyone else? Or will we find our own path through this particular circumstance? What will we do? What will you do? As life presents the unique challenges to you, as they demon-possessed, as it were, present themselves to you, will you run in fear? Or will you be aware enough to be perceived as a son, a daughter of God? What will you do? What will you be? These are important things for us to consider. And they are individual. Each one of us must look at it for himself or herself and decide and choose. Choose to be in the world or choose to be of the world. It's always a choice in every moment, in every situation. It's a choice. It is never anything less than a choice. When we find ourselves in these places, we need to be able to recognize that we need to choose. We need to choose what is the way that we want to go. How we will move, how we will respond in any given circumstance. Will we simply allow ourselves to fall into it like everyone else? Or will we, in some way or fashion, will we do different? Will we make ourselves the persons that God intended us to be? Take thou authority, Jesus says to his followers. We can't take authority if we are like the world. So what will we choose? What will you choose? As you go into this Wednesday, what is your choice? Just be aware, moment by moment, in every decision, in every situation, just be aware that there's a conscious choice that you can make. And make it. You're either in or you're of. Which one? Your call.